Well, the author who brought us The Tipping Point and Blink is out with a new book, and here to tell us about it is Arise News book editor and Human.com online bookstore CEO, Marva Allen. Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Lady in red.
Lady in red. She's looking at me, right?
Yeah, you look good. You look marvelous. So you have two really fascinating books that are very, very different.
Yes, very, very different, but somewhat similar, and you'll see
Okay,
as
all right.
we talk about it. The first one is David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, who is always pushing the social envelope and asking us to look at things differently. And this book is no different. It's about the underdogs, the misfits, and the art of battling giants. What he's asking us to do is to look at disadvantages in a different way, and things that we take for granted, like going to Harvard, for example, that could possibly be the best thing for us. It isn't unless we're in the first third of the class. If we're even though we're brighter than a lot of people, if we're in the third quarter of the class, then we decompensate and we don't do quite as well. So for those people, it would have been better for them to have gone to the University of Maryland or something where they would have been in the top third. And so those social pressures and so on. And he starts out with the story of David and Goliath from the Bible, and he analyzes that in a completely new way, that the giant was a giant because he had acromegaly, which is an overgrowth of so on, and that he also was blind. And so when he couldn't see David very well. And the comments that people have said about that, well, look, you have to talk about David's faith. He really believed that God would free the Israelites, and he believed that he was just doing the bidding of God. So how does all of this work? But I think he always asks us to think beyond the obvious. And that's what I love about him, apart from the fact that he's just a beautiful writer.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, he's also prone to some mathematical things. His father is a mathematician, so all the stats in the book that shows you all of these things. But again, for anyone who thinks, for example, that 33% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, and the ones that are hugely successful, and how they've compensated to allow for that success. And I think it's just really a great way to look at life. So you're just who you are, and just go from where you are to where you need to be.
And so is he making observations using specific examples to make observations?
Yes, he is. He's using specific examples. He's talking about, the entrepreneurs who are dyslexic and what they had to do to cope to become who they are today. They see the world completely differently. So is it really a disadvantage to be dyslexic? He talked about the students in education and class sizes and all of these kinds of things that could impact success.
I got it.
And I'm saying, well, I love Malcolm Gladwell, but don't I always agree with his observations. I think sometimes they're a little bit simplistic, but you can't argue with him in wanting to broaden our minds a bit.
Yeah, okay. So how did you feel about this book?
How did I feel about this book? I really felt that it's typical Malcolm Gladwell. He's very erudite, as you know, and he makes certain assumptions, but I personally feel that there's so many variables that impact any particular decision that you can't just make a broad statement like that. And that's the same problem I had with Blink, and if you look at, when we talk about these two books being so different, they really aren't, because Usain Bolt is sort of an anomaly, but when you see his life, you see the total picture of what made him who he became. Okay,
but before you start to talk about Usain Bolt, let's stay with Michael Gladwell.
Yes.
Excuse me, Malcolm Gladwell for just a second. Yeah. So how does this book, for instance, compare to the other book, Blink and The Tipping Point?
Same sort of trend, same sort of social, psychological look at life, and always, he's always looking for the underdog. He's always looking for the people who don't quite fit, and why that might be of interest to him. It has been of interest to him in almost all of his books. And it is on the same trending. It's now taking this disability and disadvantage and David and Goliath story, just like The Tipping Point talk about, when you get to critical mass, and just like Blink talked about intuition. This time he's talking about disadvantages. So it's typical Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, indeed. And it is sort of a novel concept that it might be better to be David than to be Goliath.
Exactly. and we've used it for so long, why not? not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. I know you want to talk about Usain Bolt.
I wonder why.
Yeah. Okay, so this is his autobiography.
Yes, this is coming out in November, and this book is so much fun because it sounds like him speaking. He speaks everything at the end of his sentences seriously, and so on. But what I love this man. I love what he stands for, and I love his tenacity. But what you get in this book is that he's really very lazy. You know, he does not like to work more than necessary, and he knew that he had a natural gift. And he didn't, for many years, he didn't understand the difference between just a natural gift and honing your skills, you know. And so in this book, you meet his mother, who just loves him to death. He claims and will claim and still claims today that he's a mama's boy and not ashamed of it. She gave him the bedrock on which he grew, and a father who was a big disciplinarian and knew he was prone to laziness, so he would make him go to the well 40 times and bring water back to the house. They lived up in a part of Jamaica that the Maroons lived, and and so it's very, very tough terrain, and that's where he learned to run. So he thought it was just fun for so many years, and he started his first competitive times at 12 years old. You know, so one of the things he says to people, I am 25 years old, I'm going to be 30 years old soon, but I've been running since I've been 12. So in fact, in the Malcolm Gladwin way, he has done his 10,000 hours. Yeah, indeed. You know, indeed. And so, you know, we realize that even though he was given a gift, he has some limitations. He's too tall to run the 100 meters effectively. But he wins everyone because he's learned how to compensate. He has scoliosis, which would have threatened his career, you know, and he had to figure out what he needed to do to continue to win.
This is what I want to ask you about Usain Bolt, because I can remember when he burst onto the scene at the Olympics. That's when I first became aware of him. And I remember, you know, he's known for doing that lightning bolt sign, which wasn't necessarily considered to be sportsmanlike, that perhaps he's a little bit arrogant. Does he talk about his inner confidence and some of that he takes a bad rap for? Yes,
he absolutely does. And he's one of those outliers, guys. He really doesn't care, you know. And he didn't start the lightning bolt thing. It was actually, and that's, I don't want to give it away because it's a good story in the book of how it started, but he thought it was connecting with the audience, you know. And he loves it, but he is very cocky, but cocky because he stands on content, you know, not just flashy and talking and so on. And he is, as he says, a Jamaican man, which is which lends to that kind of thing. But it's not arrogance, you know, it is just the ability to say, I am going to win. And he says how important it is for you to tell yourself psychologically that you're in the win. All right, that's Usain Bolt's Faster Than Lightning and Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath. Yes. Marva, thank you as always. Okay. We'll see you next week. See you next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow on Arise America. Bye-bye.